The chess game has divided into three parts: opening, middle game, and endgame part. And the middle game part is the most crucial part of the game because that's where our most of the results will be dependent on. And this is a part of the game where our calculation skills will speak for itself. Accurate calculation is a source of all success in chess. And the mark of strong chess players is that they have very good ability to calculate the variations well. And this is very true that chess is 99% of the tactics. In today's video, we're gonna talk about with you 5 tips that can help you to improve your calculation skills to the next level. Let's keep it short and get started. Tip number 1. Start calculating after observing the result of your opponent's last move. It's usually a good idea to come up with your next plan or with your next move when its opponent's time is running, because somehow you'll be familiar with the position and you will prepare some sort of calculation when it's your opponent's move. Well, the thing is that you should not ignore the importance of your opponent's last move, because once he makes that move, you'll reach the final position, and definitely once he made the move, there should be some changes in the position. As we will see in the current position that it's kind of the minor pieces endgame, and white pawn was really advanced to d6. And currently it was being pressed by the knight and defended by the bishop. What here white was preparing, that white was kind of thinking that this knight will jump to e8, with that black would have 2 attackers against 1 defender, and definitely black is going to win this pawn. And white was understanding that there is no real chance to save this pawn, and that's why he was kind of preparing that after knight e8, I will go f4, and no matter what, how hard white tries, he's going to lose the pawn, but at least he would be able to reach like this sort of close position, which will give him some sort of like a draw chances. But what happened in the game was that there was another way that black tried to win the pawn. And that was by playing king f7, which means by playing king f7, black would bring his king to e6, and again that d6 pawn being attacked by the 2 pieces of the black. But we already mentioned that you should recheck your plan once your opponent made the move, because now it's a final position, you see, king f7, and it's your turn. Still, it's possible f4, f5, but here we have an even stronger option, because the final move kinda changed the position. And now once king played king f7, there was a tactic that white played, and it is taking the pawn on b5, which is that being protected by the bishop, and taking another pawn, and it's happening with the check, so black is forced to take it back, and now pushing the pawn. As you can see, this pawn right now unstoppable, and no matter what, whatever black tries to play here, it's getting promoted in the next move. And how that all happened? Because literally black went to king f7, and after this sacrifice, we were able to take that with a check, and it was important. Because in the knight e8 case, it wouldn't be important, it wouldn't be possible to do that, because after takes, bishop c4, it is not happening with a check. And simply, black would have retreat his bishop to d7 and was the extra piece on the board. Tip number 2. Knowing the difference between forcing and non-forcing moves. You need to understand that in chess only some, but not all the moves should be calculated. Try to calculate the forcing moves. Well, when it comes to forcing and non-forcing move, what does they really mean? Well, forcing move is a move that once you make that, your opponent would be literally busy with your last move, because it will create the threat to your opponent's field. Maybe you will attack one of his pieces, or you're offering to exchange one of the pieces. But non-forcing move doesn't create an immediate threat. And by that it means your opponent still would be able to continue to do his own plan that he's been doing, or he can just do whatever he wants. Once you reach the middle game, the positions become much more complicated, and the number of the forcing moves increases. And the good news is that there's a limit to calculating variations in forcing moves. There are 4 types of forcing moves in chess. Number 1, checks. Number 2, captures, which often implies exchanging the pieces. Number 3, sacrifice. And lastly, it's threats. Alright, so we got the point. What's the difference between forcing and non-forcing moves, and what are the forcing moves? And now let's see how it really works in a real game. As we can see right now, it's a middle game position where only for both of sides the pawns are being traded, but still the minor pieces and major pieces are on the board. And here it's the white's turn to play. And white has a bunch of non-forcing moves, and it's literally pushing the pawn, pushing here, pushing that pawn, or just playing with the rook. A lot of moves, and white doesn't really have the time to think each one by one, because it takes literally all the time for white. As we understood, we need to try to calculate only the forcing moves. Alright, what sort of forcing moves are possible in this position? First of all, cool, we have the captures, which means exchanging the pieces. What else do we have? We have this move, knight f4, and that is what? By playing knight f4, we are threatening the bishop. Alright, cool. So I got the point. I have taken the knight and I can go to the knight. Well, now I need really to compare which one to go. Taking then both of the knights will literally not good option for white, because white is ending up just losing 2 pair of bishops, and it immediately gives the advantage for the black. Try to understand, it doesn't mean you have the forcing move on the board and you need to make it. If you're seeing the forcing move and it's not working, alright, just skip that part. But as we can see, we had a second forcing move, and that was playing knight f4. Well, this is kind of looks interesting. Why? Because once you played with the knight, the bishop is under attack. And literally now black should be busy by taking care of this bishop. Otherwise, if you play something like different, like let's just say pushing the pawn and still attacking on the king side, we can just remove this knight and take the free bishop, because our rook is supporting our knight and we are ending up with the extra bishop. That's why black need probably retreat the bishop, and we were able to make our forcing moves, and black also made his move and got back. And from this perspective, white can come up his own plans. Queen b2, h4, since in the current situation we don't really have any kind of forcing moves. Sometimes there would be the positions that you will have more than 3 forcing moves, and all of them should be calculated in order to understand which one really works best. So what's going on right now? You understood the difference between forcing and non-forcing move. You understood what are the forcing moves. And now, lastly, you need to compare them during the game in order to go for the best. Here you can see that black is attacking on the white's kingside field. But if you pay attention very closely, actually black is already down the rook and the knight. Probably he sacrificed in order to reach this position. And now, what sort of forcing moves are possible for white? Well, first of all, it's taking the bishop. That's a sacrifice. It's taking the rook, and it's getting the check. 3 forcing moves are possible. Well, you cannot really predict which one to move unless if you not make your homework here, because you need to calculate in order to come up with the answer. So let's start first with taking the bishop, the sacrifice. If you take that, king takes back. And if you take the bishop, and after we take the bishop, rook is taking the back. And we take another knight, and king f2. And at this moment, kind of our check is finished, and we need to take another bishop. And here we can see, after making this like the 3-4 moves, kind of black position is fine, which is good to go. But do we have maybe stronger options than that? Because rook f1, kind of right now we are understanding, yeah, I can possibly go this variation, but wait, I still have 2 options I haven't considered yet. Maybe they're stronger than it, maybe worse, because you don't know, you need to calculate. Alright, this was the forcing moves, the first forcing move that we considered. And at the end, we are ending up having a down exchange, but since we have more pawns than our opponent, it's still better for the black perspective. Alright, the second move what we had was capturing the rook. But there's a little bit problem with this move that once the rook takes back, kind of black already sacrificed a lot of pieces, and it feels like right now we are still like a down pieces. But still it has a continuation, and that is we will take the bishop, king takes, and at the end we are ending up having the same position as the sacrifice that we did in the initial move. So rook f1, bishop g2, literally giving us the same option. But still, we left the last one. What was that? Giving the bishop check on h2. Alright, let's see. We give the check, and white can literally go right now in two ways. It's taking the bishop or taking with the rook. Let's see first what happens if rook takes. If rook takes, it is very easy because we can just take the bishop and checkmate our opponent. Well, how about the king? Once king captures, again you should start it all over. Forcing moves. Again, we can take the bishop, we can take the rook, but sometimes when you're calculating, especially when you're attacking, there's a thing called intuition in chess. You need to believe in your intuition, and most often times we can figure out the best move by just predicting that intuitively. We can take the we can take the bishop, still we can take the rook, but we have a very simple option, and that's a discard attack, which helps us to win the queen. And with that way, we are winning the queen, and black has a winning position on the board. Overall, what happened here was that we had three interesting possible forcing moves to be considered, and we considered that, and finally we made the decision that we will go with the bishop h2 because that was giving us a much more better winning position and better position than taking the bishop or the rook. Finally, I want to make here the last point is that chess is a game, yeah, definitely your calculation matters, but keep in mind, you need to have good calculation skill and you need to be able to calculate that in a less amount of time. Tip number 3. The ability to calculate deeper variations heavily depends on your visualization skill. There would be situations sometimes during the game when you will kind of forget the placement of the piece after calculating 3-4 moves ahead. Well, this is the moment where simply it tells that you have some sort of like the work should need to be done with your visualization skill. Probably you saw that Hikaru usually on his streams or some YouTube videos that when he plays during the game or calculates some sort of tactics, he usually looks up and then calculates, sometimes shakes his head. But yeah, he basically calculates and figure out the best option. That is the process when he will do that by looking up or looking somewhere. He usually tries to calculate all the moves like blindfoldly. And the good news that this skill can be learned by just any, like a chess player, any person, by following the right steps and of course by practice. The practice is a key to success. So what would be my recommendation for you to improve your visualization skill? Well, the first thing first, that you need to kind of start to solve the tactics where there are less pieces on the board. You know, chess is 64 squares, 32 pieces, and you cannot start doing blindfolded puzzles immediately starting that there are 10, 15 pieces on the board. What you should do is that start from the beginning, but slowly make it challenging. For example, how you can do that? First, solve the tactics where there are 3 pieces on the board. Then 4 pieces, 5 pieces, etc, etc. Reach the point where you are able to calculate tactics where there are 10 pieces on the board. And then you can move on to checkmate in a 1 move, checkmate in a 2 move, 3 moves. And after that, now it's time for the patterns. You can start doing the tactics, connect with the fork, pin, discard attack, because those patterns kind of easy, and then slowly you can go to again the challenging one, maybe at the end you can try out some sort of like a annihilation of defense or any sort of like a much more challenging pattern rather than the fork and the pin. And basically here you can see is that what's going is that you are kind of learning chess from the scratch, but blindfolded. You see, you start the tactics from 3 moves, move to checkmate in the 1 move, and then slowly with the patterns. That's how the process will go. And after that, once you will do this sort of like a steps, the practice, and then let's just try give a shot for the blindfold game. Well, definitely it will be really not your best game when you try out first your initial maybe 5-10 games, but practice makes the things perfect. Try to find the partner maybe from your school friend or from your friend at like work, or maybe it could be your family members, whoever, don't matter. But what you will do with them when you're playing with them gives them the physical board, and yourself just play blindfoldedly. And then after the game, try to ask from them like where you really made a mistake, or just tell them to take them the note where you made a mistake or where you made even the illegal move. Time to time, these sort of mistakes will be gone, and you will become closer to your goal. And now we arrived to tip number 4. Probably you're curious, what's the next tip? Maybe the 3 tips that I mentioned probably you were familiar with. And now tip number 4. And it stands for solving endgame tactics. Well, probably you're 6 months of experience as a chess player, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. But so far what you worked on to improve your calculation, probably it was literally the puzzles, and puzzles. Well, no doubt, the puzzles are the best way to improve your calculation, but from today you should add another thing to your list, and that stands for the chess studies. Well, why chess studies? Because chess studies will improve your deep, longer calculation skill. Usually when you solve the puzzles, it's around 3-4 moves, and definitely it improves your short-term calculation. But when you're playing longer time controls, such as the classical, it makes sense to go much more deeper in calculating the variations. And that's where, if you work on the endgame tactics without any kind of like a trouble, you'll be able to calculate the much more longer variations. At the same time, chess etudes are much more creative than the puzzles, because sometimes one chess etude can take even more than 15-20. But the most sweet part of solving the etude is that after taking that 25-30 minutes and you figure out the solution, that's the best moment, because the solution always just a brilliant. And once you've solved that etude, that 30 minutes of like a hard time that you spent will be gone very in a second. Last but not least, in the endgame tactics, it would be usually very less pieces on the board around the puzzles, and keep in mind that most of the chess etudes are being created, and that's why it takes much more time to calculate and to figure out to come up with the right answer. And the final tip would be to play chess 9060 games, or we can say that Fischer random. When it comes to the difference between the Fischer random and the normal chess game is that in a normal chess game you usually can play that initial 10-15 moves on autopilot, because of what? You have the enough opening knowledge that you memorize everything and you're just playing even without spending some seconds on the clock. But in a chess 9060, since it has like a 90 positions, every time you're ending up having a new position, which you need to know like a 90 theories in order to make it all happen correctly. So that's why there is no opening stage kind of in the chess 9060, and from the first move itself, you already need to start thinking prophylactically and tactically, so you can put the correct setup. I would say it's kind of like a building the Lego, you know. When we were young, we built some things from the Lego. Let's just say if you and your friend or your neighbor tried to build the house, yours was different and his was different. And it's why? It's based on your kind of creativeness, it's based on your plans. And it's the same in chess 9060. Every time it's in your hands to build something special, something interesting. And at the same time, why it's a good way to work on your calculation by just playing chess 960, because the piece configurations in the chess 960 are placed so well that it will give you the opportunity to do much more tactical motives. For example, the placement of the knights or the bishops will kind of give you the new patterns or the motives that you will not usually see in a classical chess. Before we conclude our video, let's make a quick review that what had been discussed in this video. So the 5 skills are: the first one, once your opponent made the move, recheck your plan or recheck your calculation that you prepared when his time was running. Because he made the move, the position changed, maybe you can have an even better idea than you prepared. Number 2, try to calculate only the forcing moves. Number 3, work on your visualizing skill, and that you're gonna do first of all by doing the easy blindfold puzzles and slowly challenging, and finally moving on playing the blindfolded games. Number 4, definitely do the puzzles, but at the same time work with the endgame tactics. So you need to also to have not short calculation technique, but deep calculation technique also really matters in a short amount of in a longer time controls. And finally, chess 9060, which is you will just play the game, and it would be a really great opportunity for you to practice your tactical motives, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, in chess 960 there are 5040 combinations are possible, so there's a really huge chance that you can do one of them. Thanks all for watching this video. Keep calm, play chess, and enjoy your learning process.